Fathers and Children is an 1862 novel by Ivan Turgenev. Turgenev is usually considered to be one of the three greatest Russian novelists of the 19th century, the others being Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. Fathers and Children is his greatest novel. It's meant to be a novel of ideas in that the central character, a young medical student called Yevgeny Bartsarov, is a nihilist. Nihilism was a movement that sprang up in Russia around 1860, but it gained popularity as a result of Turgenev's novel. It claimed that in order for the nation to make social progress, a clean sweep was necessary. The past had nothing useful to offer. A new kind of individual, hard-hearted and determined, was required to carry out the process of renewal. The novel begins when Bartsarov and his friend Arkady Kirsanov, also a student, go to stay on a country estate owned by the latter's father. The older Kirsanovs, Arkady's father and uncle, are middle-aged and unmarried. The uncle is a reformer and a westernizer and prides himself on his liberal ideals. He and Bartsarov get into continual bitter disagreements, culminating in the older man challenging the younger to a duel, which ends fairly farcically. Eventually, Bartsarov decides he's stirred up enough trouble and sets off to recommence his life elsewhere, but the process doesn't turn out as anyone planned or would have wanted. Perhaps surprisingly for a novel of ideas, the ideas themselves don't play much part. In his 1991 introduction to the Everyman edition, the literary critic John Bailey claims that Bartsarov never comes alive or shows signs of being anything other than a portent and a symbol. But I think that's too harsh. Bartsarov's perfectly real. Most of us probably know men that resemble him. He's outspoken and rather self-satisfied, spoiled in a way we all understand nowadays, partly because he's an only child and his parents have doted on him. The more interesting point is that he can be fully understood apart from his nihilism. In fact, there's very little in the novel to make him the exemplar of some grand approach to Russian politics. I'd argue that his apparent lifelessness arises solely from the fact that readers have been conditioned to look for his interesting features in the wrong places. They're looking for the kinds of characters Dostoevsky drew in Demons. Bartsarov is far more conventional. The interesting thing about this insight, if it is an insight and not a misunderstanding on my part, is that it liberates the novel from the weight of 19th century politics. It gives it a more universal appeal. It's really about pragmatism versus idealism, young versus old, the social value of science, and particularly about the limits of self-knowledge. Because none of the characters, including Bartsarov, really know themselves, and that's not a bad thing, because it gives the universe the freedom to change them in ways they don't necessarily anticipate, and they all do change. The only thing that mars this novel is Turgenev's depiction of Yevdoksya Kukshina, the feminist. Had this really been a philosophical novel, she'd have been a lot more rounded. As it is, she's treated unsympathetically to the point where she's almost a caricature. Whether that's a minor fault or a major problem is for you to decide.